Hey guys, welcome to a new movie review. Sorry this review is a little late. I just had a lot of work recently and just a lot of conflicts that kind of prevented me from seeing this film earlier. But finally got around to seeing Detective Pikachu. As most of you know or are about to know, I've been kind of pushing for video game movies to be good for a long time. I really truly believe that with the right writer and the right director and the right approach, you can make a really good video game film adaptation. It's just a matter of adapting it to the screen in the right way. And thankfully, or at least for me, I personally thought that we've had some films earlier that have already achieved this, but now for the most general majority of people, I think this is kind of their first really good video game movie, and that is Detective Pikachu. So I think we finally broke the curse. I think we finally have our first good one, and so hopefully this trend will continue. Hopefully with Sonic the Hedgehog in November, and then I think there's a couple of other video game films coming out in the next couple of years too. So, but in Detective Pikachu, guys, this is the film I'm reviewing for you today. It's about a young man played by Justice Smith who was in last year's Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. He had a role in that one. He has a major role in this one, and his father has gone missing. There was this whole thing with Mewtwo being created, kind of like for those who remember Pokemon, the first movie, with that Pokemon there. There's this whole thing with Mewtwo, and obviously it's in the real world, and so they're trying to really create Mewtwo. And something goes wrong. Mewtwo kind of goes missing. Last time Mewtwo was seen, there was this big car crash, and Mewtwo was there, and there was this whole thing with what exactly happened to the guy who turned out to be Justice Smith's dad, and where exactly did Mewtwo go, and what's he gonna do, and is his intentions good or bad? And so all this is figured out over the course of the film. And then also while the film is going on, Justice Smith's character basically has a case that falls on his lap as he's working for an insurance company, and he comes across a little Pikachu who claims he's a detective, and he wants to help out Justice Smith solve the case and figure out what exactly happened to his dad that night, where exactly Mewtwo is. Did Mewtwo have anything involved with it and stuff like that? Who really was behind the whole thing? Who really is kind of out to make Pokemon a bad thing, since the Pokemon live in the real world, and they kind of are out to make Pokemon kind of a bad thing and make people move on and stuff like that. And so throughout the course of this film, Pikachu and Justice Smith are trying to figure out this case of what happened to the dad, and they're also trying to figure out what happened to Mewtwo, and all this is over the course over Detective Pikachu the movie. So, guys, I really enjoyed this film a lot. I actually was probably one of the first generations to be exposed to Pokemon here in North America. I was about 8 or 9 years old when Pokemon first became big in the U.S. I remember when Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Yellow were kind of the first big Game Boy games to hit America and kind of make the Pokemon craze happen. Obviously, there was the trading cards after that, Pokemon the first movie after that, Pokemon the TV series, all this stuff was going on. Pokemon merchandise, everything you could think of. I remember just being a part of the craze and just really being into it and stuff like that, collecting the cards and impressing friends and family with characters that I caught in the game and stuff like that. I would say Ruby and Sapphire version for the Game Boy Advance was kind of when I fell out of Pokemon a little bit. Yeah, I was still kind of exposed to Pokemon through the Super Smash Brothers game series and other Nintendo properties that they kind of showed up in over the years. That was kind of my dropout with Pokemon. Not that I hated the franchise or anything like that, but that's just kind of where I lost interest, moved on to other things, kind of grew up and moved on to other game franchises and stuff like that. But thankfully, I think Detective Pikachu is going to be the film and be the property that kind of gets me back into Pokemon. I kind of feel bad for kind of ignoring it all these years now, and I think Detective Pikachu was just good enough to make me interested in Pokemon again, just in case we get another film, like another sequel to this movie, or any type of spin-off or any type of new game along the way, since I have a Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. But anyway, back to the review of Detective Pikachu. I'm starting to go on my little Pokemon rant there, but for goods and bads of Detective Pikachu, first and foremost, the visual effects in this film are absolutely amazing. There's so many scenes here where the Pokemon kind of blend into the real world, and they really feel like they belong here. There's even scenes where we have close-ups of Pikachu, and you see like all his fur, and you see like the little red dots on his cheek, and all of it looks like real fur. And when there's a battle with Charizard in one scene, and like you can see all the scales on him, and it just looks so real. And they really tried to find ways to take real life animals, apply it to Pokemon, kind of blend the two together to see kind of what Pokemon would look like in the real world. And I thought they did a very impressive job with that. So the visual effects in this film are very, very good. Ryan Reynolds as Detective Pikachu was kind of the star of the show here. Every time Detective Pikachu shows up, it has some jokes, does something funny. Ryan Reynolds really pulls it off really well. He really was a very good choice for Detective Pikachu. He kind of brought what made him so good in Deadpool and brought it to Pikachu, and I thought it was a perfect blend. I was kind of iffy about it at first, but now that I kind of see where they went and kind of what the direction that Ryan Reynolds himself took with the character, I was very happy with the results. So Ryan Reynolds' Detective Pikachu, that was pretty awesome to see. I also liked how the film really made it feel like a real-world Pokemon world. It really felt like the Pokemon have been here for a long time. There's even an image in the film where they show like a picture from Egypt where the Pokemon were helping like people build the pyramids and stuff like that. So they really tried to make the point that Pokemon were around in this world for a long time. There's been a lot of trainers, a lot of people who study them, a lot of people who take photographs. Kind of like in the TV show, remember how like they would have people who had like Pokemon related jobs, and there was like Nurse Joy and the police officer lady. So they kind of have a lot of that in this movie. So I really like how they really made sure that the real world felt like a Pokemon world, that the Pokemon have been here for a long time, here to help us out, and we could do battles with them and stuff like that. So I really like that feeling that they did of real world Pokemon. I also thought Justice Smith and his character was very good in this movie. I thought he was very well written. They have a lot of background for his character. His character in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom really wasn't very impressive, and I think that's mostly the script's fault and J.A. Bayana's fault, the director of that movie. I think Justice Smith really kind of is a very talented person. I think this film really kind of shows his talents a little more. Like I said, there's a lot of background to his character, a lot of things you kind of understand where he's coming from. I really liked his performance in this movie. Hopefully, if they make a sequel, his character will be back in the sequel as well. I kind of have a hard time seeing them do a sequel kind of without Justice Smith being involved with it now. So I really liked his character, and I like how Justice Smith handled the character. I also liked all the scenes that showed Pokemon trainers and Pokemon battles, all the elements of the story that really kind of incorporate that, and when Justice Smith or Detective Pikachu or one of those major characters kind of got involved with that. Really cool stuff to see, and I liked how they really incorporated as much Pokemon memorabilia as possible to make this film work as best as it can. To make it work as best as possible. I probably should have said that instead. So, for my negatives, though, of Detective Pikachu, there's a lot of Pokemon in this film that are just kind of backdrop. There's just so many scenes where, like, they'll be walking through a city, or they'll be walking, like, by a cage battle of some kind, and there's just all these Pokemon just kind of sitting on somebody's shoulder, or just standing with the people watching what's going on. Some of them just kind of felt like backdrop. One thing that this film has been referenced to is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I can kind of see why, because one thing that Who Framed Roger Rabbit did that I thought this film didn't do as well with is in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, even on scenes where it wasn't like Roger Rabbit or one of the lead animated characters in that movie, but within a live action setting, they found ways for the other characters, whether it was backdrop characters or side characters or just characters that are involved in the scene, they found ways to kind of make them more interactive and do things that really make it feel like they were part of that world a little bit more. In this film, it's more like they're just kind of in the backdrop. They're just kind of sitting there with the people characters that have really nothing to do with the story, and they just really don't interact with anything. It's more so just scenes where like they're on the street and maybe they see like Squirrel putting out a fire or something like that, is where they really feel more interactive. So I thought they could have done more of like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit, make all the animated characters kind of involved with the world a little bit more, because sometimes they just feel like backdrop, and that's a very disappointing thing, seeing just how well the Pokemon were brought to life in the real world in this film. So I wanted more interactivity with these backdrop Pokemon rather than just placing them in the background and just putting them in the movie. For my negatives also for this film, or for another negative I had for the movie, there's just some pointless human side characters. Like there's this girl reporter that follows Justice Smith around, and you kind of think for a while she might be a love interest and stuff. She's just kind of there to join the adventure. I really thought like her character really wasn't needed in this movie. Another character I thought kind of the same thing was Ken Watanabe's character, the guy from Inception and the 2014 Godzilla movie. I thought his character was just kind of there to make sure that Justice Smith didn't get in trouble or that he was kind of in the right place of his life and stuff like that. So he just was kind of there for a couple of story points, and then he kind of left the movie. So there's just a lot of side characters, specifically some human side characters that are really just kind of pointless in this movie, and it really didn't need to be in the movie. There's also some inconsistent size scaling with the Pokemon. There's one, no, I would say two Pokemon in particular in this movie where it's just like they're so huge. It's just like how in the world would any trainer be able to catch them? And so I remember in like the TV show and stuff like that. Yeah, there was like really really big Pokemon too, like Dragonite. I remember was one of them. Steelix was one of them. But they at least found like ways of explaining how like a really really big Pokemon like that could get captured in a Pokeball and stuff like that. In this film, there's scenes where they're like in a forest of some kind, and there's this humongous Pokemon. It's just like, how in the world would anybody capture that? And how in the world would they be able to contain that for like any kind of battle at all? So I thought there was just some size scaling things where it's just like it just felt a little inconsistent, and I felt like the film could have done a better job of explaining how certain Pokemon are so big and how some of them are really really tiny. So I thought that could have been explained better. And I also thought the overall mystery of the film was a little predictable. Yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there's a lot of scenes in it where you kind of catch on right away who the bad guy is going to be. But at least in that film, once again, going back to the interactivity of the characters and stuff, they had so much more going on in that movie that really made it worth your while, whether it was the mystery or the animation blending with the live action and things like that. I just thought the overall mystery here was just kind of point A to point B to point C. Really nothing too surprising or big about it, just kind of there to make sure that the Detective Pikachu name kind of lives up to the title and stuff like that. So for me personally, I thought the mystery was a little predictable, unfortunately. But overall, I'm going to give Detective Pikachu an 8.5 out of 10. I'm really happy we kind of have our first big, successful video game film adaptation. Hopefully we have more to come. Hopefully we have another Detective Pikachu film on the way at some point soon. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Really like the film. Glad to see a big video game movie do successful for once. 8.5 out of 10 for me.